right, welcome everybody as individuals trickle in. Going to wait probably just a minute so we have a chance for people to join. We have a lot to get through today, so I'm not going to do my usual waiting for 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes that I do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Welcome everyone who is joining us for this webinar on caregiver resiliency and relationships among parent and child relationships. My name is Hannah Sawyer. I am a white woman with a sort of light brown-ish ponytail. I'm sitting in my power wheelchair, and there's a golden white tapestry behind me. I work as the content specialist for the Reeve Foundation, and I'm honored to be able to moderate this discussion on relationships between parents and children, where one of the individuals is providing care for the other. Although I believe we will all hear about how it is a much more reciprocal relationship than simply one individual providing care for the other. This is a personal topic for me. I have a full team. Well, I shouldn't say a full team. I have an around-the-clock team of caregivers, hired caregivers, and my mom fills in the gaps from not having a full team. She's also one of my main supports in my life. And so I'm really excited to be able to moderate this discussion. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let our speakers introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naomi Williams. I am a life doula and grief coach with Exceptional Living 101. I am a Black woman. I have black and purple hair. You can't tell that because of the background that I have right now. But I'm a Black woman. My hair is black and purple. It's in a ponytail. I am wearing a royal blue shirt, and I am in front of a black background with orange and teal paint strokes. It's a painting that's done by my son, Noah Samuel Williams. It's called Divine Connections. And he is who brings me to this webinar and this conversation today. He is a 16-year-old endurance athlete and abstract artist who lives with spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy, and I am his mom and full-time caregiver. Brayden?
Hello, my name is Bryn Barnes. I'm a white male wearing a blue button-up shirt, a purple and blue striped tie. I have short blonde hair, black glasses, and I'm in front of a plain white wall. Um, I'm a college student studying engineering, and I have a mom who's been paralyzed since I was 7. So, yeah, I'm speaking today to speak on my relationship growing up with my mom, right? And be a peer mentor for the Christopher Reeve Foundation. Yeah, so, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Braden. Hi, everyone. My name is Marjorie. I'm a white woman with a brown shoulder length hair, wearing glasses, and one feature that you cannot see right now, I am also in a manual wheelchair because I sustained a spinal cord injury when my son was 16 months old. So I'm paraplegic. And I'm here to talk about my relationship with my son, but also some of the research that I know of about positive psychology that could sort of inform us about this conversation. So I would start actually by suggesting somewhat of a language shift or some additional vocabulary that we could use when we talk about caregiving and when we talk about relationships where one of the person has a disability. And the first one is really sort of the myth of independence. Often we think that people or human beings need to be fully, independent and autonomous and doing things on their own. And what I would like to suggest is actually sort of having that conversation around interdependence and agency. So for me, it's sort of, Thomas, who's now 15, might do certain things in the house to help out. But in the same time, I'm still sort of like the mom. I'm still the one, directing sort of what needs to be done in the house, which means that I have agency. I exert control over my life choices, over, the direction of our lives, just like, somebody else would also, do that. So we could have agency even though it's through someone else. So agency by proxy, and that is also part of the vocabulary that I would like to share here. Another type of vocabulary that I would like to share is about the notion of character strength. So in positive psychology, there was a big research that was done 25 years ago that looked about what are the character strengths that are universal across countries and cultures and religions. And for example, there are some that are very present in relationships, when there's caregiving happening or when there's sort of parents and children. And those character strengths are love, kindness, certainly like when you're caregiving for someone, kindness is one great character strength to embody. There's the notion also of teamwork. Often I would say to Thomas when he was younger, you and I have to work as a team. So if we're going to the grocery store and I tell you like to stay beside me, then you have to stay beside me as my teammate. And so teamwork is one, and then creativity. As many people here unfortunately know, our society has a lot of barriers for people with disabilities. And so having a creative mind to find different solutions is really important and allows us to live our lives. And then through that, and through also the use of positive emotions, that's when we could really create sort of those connections that are of high quality. And those really lead to greater well-being when we have good relationships with the people that are around us. And positive emotions could allow us to do that. And when I talk about positive emotions, I talk about joy, for example. So if you come in and you say, hey, how are you doing? Usually it has an impact on the other person who might also feel, joy at that time. Gratitude is another positive emotion. So in a caregiving relationship, feeling grateful because the person was kind to us or because they followed through with the directions that we gave them, that really enhances that connection. Pride, I always see my son and talk about him with a lot of pride, just like I'm pretty sure Braden's mom also. And just like when Naomi talks about her son being like an artist, there's a lot of pride and love in that as well. So those positive emotions really help us sort of bind our relationships and further enhance, positive emotion. And finally, what I would say is that ultimately people want to matter in their world. And to matter, you need to have two conditions happening. One is that you're ultimately feeling like you're valued by others, that you're seen, that you're respected, that what you do, your actions, your presence is valued by them, and that also you can add value. And that means adding value by painting something beautiful that your mom is going to put on her screen when she's, talking in a webinar. Adding value when you're there to empty the garbage because your mom is in a wheelchair and it's harder for her to do. So adding value by helping out is one of the ways that we also sort of feel like we matter in the world. And so with that said, this is, a snippet of like some research that we know of positive psychology that could be used or talked about today in our webinar.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. And thank you to Braden and Naomi for speaking on this webinar. I think, that idea of individuals who provide some sort of care or help, however we want to say it, giving other individuals agency is really striking to me. That is how I explain my caregivers, why I need them. It's not that, I need them to be independent. I need them to have agency and be able to make the choices in my life that I want to make. So we're going to transition then into the discussion among our three wonderful speakers. So what moments of Marjorie's research feel particularly true to you, just like I shared? And do you have a specific example of how perhaps helping your parent or your child has strengthened the relationship and bond, like Marjorie discussed?
Well, I'd say what elements of her research personally relate to me is growing up, I never really considered helping my mom as caregiver, right? I just always considered it as helping my mom, right? Even before she was paralyzed, when I was 5 or 6, right? I used to help them. And well, I say used to, like I still don't, but I helped her a lot. And after she was paralyzed, and even still into this day, I view it as just helping my mom. It's not really something I feel I'm her caregiver, right? I'm just actually, here's a good example. Say your younger brother needed to get something on the top shelf, right? I don't personally consider it caregiving to reach that thing on the top shelf for them. I consider it helping those you love, right? And to me, that's how I view it, is I help the people I care for, in a sense. Sure. And I guess also in ways you do kind of grow up a little bit differently, which leads into the strengthening relationship point. I grew up, I would say, different than most people my age. Having, my mom, the way I was raised, I had to kind of be, in a way, you learn to be more independent. Independent is the wrong word. You learn to be more mature in a lot of areas than others because you are having to help your parent more than, most other kids your age. However, I treat that more as a benefit than anything else because that formed a really close bond with me and my mom. A bond that I noticed people my age just didn't have for one reason or another. So, anyway, that kind of answers the question, I think. So, I'll pass it off to you.
I really appreciate the work that you've done, Marjorie, and I was over here taking notes because I've never heard the term character strengths presented that way. And I can say for me, I heard all the things that Noah would not do or what he wouldn't become because of his disabilities and paralysis. And what I can say as his mom and as you're talking about agency, that's the thing that I've always wanted for him to have without having this language. My whole thing in raising a child is for them to be the best version of themselves and a productive member of society, whatever that looks like for them, right? And so um being able, so even though Noah does require a lot of support, and that's okay, he has a ton of agency and respecting, not only me respecting that, my thing has been in teaching others that he does have agency and how to respect that. And that has been something that I have been advocating. Even yesterday, we were in the ER. And there were some things that the nurses were trying to do. And he's just, no matter how nicely you say it, he's just not going to do that. So you need to find another way to get what it is that you want done. And that has really that's been a sweet spot, I think, for us in our relationship. He knows that I have his back and that I respect him and I don't always like the choices that he makes because it makes it a little harder on me sometimes. But that's part of life.
Marjorie,
What I like,
oh yes, sorry, go ahead.
yes, I was going to say what I like about what Naomi just said is that, you know, I'm raising a 15-year-old right now, and, you know, he's also making choices and being very agentic in his choices. And so I think it's very universal that, you know, when we have our kids grow up, they have to, well, they develop into human beings who make their own choices, who have dreams of their own, and who want to assert sort of control over their lives. And that is, you know, no matter if they have a disability or not, you know, like it's sort of part of life. So it made me smile. I will mention also that the research that I shared is actually not my research. It's research, you know, from an array of different researchers over the past 25 years in positive psychology. And I found that those research were the most specific to what I was going through when, you know, I sustained my spinal cord injury and I had to readjust. And if I have to say like something about what Braden mentioned, about how like he doesn't see himself a caregiver to his mother, the few research that we have on children of parents with physical disabilities also say that. And that's one thing that they will mention, with the fact of finding benefits to, you know, learning to be mature in a different way because of their parents' disability. So, like Thomas, for example, my son is, you know, very creative and he's always thinking of different things. Or just this week, he installed a door in one of my cupboards. He's 15, but he loves it and he feels proud to be able to do that. And he was happy to show me like how strong like the door was. Um, and so this is, you know, sort of a benefit that he found. Probably not many 15-year-old have installed a door for their mother or in their mother's house. But for him, it's something that's very meaningful because it's his way of contributing and in a way adding value or being a teammate in our family. And it's not seen as something that is caregiving for me.
Thank you. Yeah, I just this idea of like cracking open our definition of caregiving to mean so much more than what perhaps a CNA or a nurse or a home health aide does is so incredibly important, as we're all discussing, as our three speakers are discussing. So I want to sort of talk about challenges, which is not to say that, you know, these sorts of relationships are negative by any means. But I also, want to acknowledge there are definitely certain challenges that come along with any relationship where care is a part of. And also perhaps just the relationship between a parent and a child, or a child and a parent, where one individual is living with a disability. So I ask my speakers, do you have an example of how you have navigated perhaps a specific challenge related to helping your parent or child, or just a challenge you've encountered related to having a loved one who also has a disability?
This is a big one. I know I could talk for an hour on challenges, if you will. And there are a lot in the sense of, there are financial, the work aspects, there are the emotional, and I think that's where I find myself at now in navigating. I'm not going to stay on that one. On the emotional challenges that I encounter, what I will say, one of the big ones that I have worked through is not wanting to, one, have any regrets, and two, to not resent my life. In the sense of, because this is a lifelong commitment. And being, my job is Noah's mom. That is the role that I signed up for. To be a lifelong caretaker came out of the blue, and I have chosen to see that through. And when I say, and not wanting to resent my life, I never want to look back on the time that I have with him and spend with him and say, oh, I wish I would have something different, or wish I would have made a different choice. And so that I have been very intentional in the things that Noah and I do. I've been very intentional in recognizing when I need a break, and how um, to make it a good life for both of us, and to where I'm not only Noah's mom and I'm not only Noah's caretaker, yet I also carve out time for Naomi. And some people look at that and they judge me, and I won't say all the things that I say. So this is my life, and this is how I'm choosing to do it. And it works for us. It works for me. And so that's one of the challenges in balancing that, and wanting to make sure that we go through this life, knowing that we are both loved and we feel that love.
Naomi, I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question. Can you share a bit more? You and I have had conversations about balancing being Noah's mom and providing care for Noah. And I think that would be really wonderful if you don't mind sharing a bit more about that, perhaps the challenge you encounter with that.
Yeah, I am just in recent years learning how to be Noah's mom. I would always introduce myself as Noah's caregiver. I'm his care. And that's hard to say. And so I'm learning because that's the role that I've had to assume in managing Noah's affairs and doctor's appointments and making sure he gets everything that he needs and insurance and school and therapies. Just that's who I was. And so really leaning into learning how to be his mom and how to create um, time and space to where I'm not just doing things to or for him, but learning how to do with. He's in his wheelchair a lot. And so working to create that space where I'm not just transferring him from one space to another, but loving on him, holding him, hugging him, rubbing his back. Um, and that I'm doing a lot of expressive movements because in thinking of that, it helps me to say, okay, that is gratifying and fulfilling my mom bucket. He can't come up to me and hug me. So I have to be the one to initiate that. And I have to be mindful to do that. Um, and creating space for him to have typical activities. They look different how we do it, but he and I both have had more life than most people.
Thank you very much. Braden or Marjorie, anything that you would like to share?
Well, onto the topic of challenges. Well, there's really a few that I can mention. Kind of, in a sense, heading back to the point I mentioned earlier. I've had to grow up a lot faster than everyone else around me, which has led to a few things. Number one, it's kind of felt a disconnect between me and my peers of just they're talking about parties and I just don't get it in a lot of the cases because I've had a lot more responsibility on my plate. Would I ever not want that? No. Do I regret any of it? Not at all. But it's a difference that you notice. So there's one thing. But another thing, kind of a secondary challenge, it for all those who know my mom, she's very stubborn. So she, throughout my life, doesn't ask me for help, even though even though sometimes she wants to, because in a sense, she's always had a feeling of not wanting to be a burden. I've never told her that, but I understand where it's coming from. So, in a sense, I've learned to help her without her asking, just instinctually, in a sense. Like, say she's going uphill, I help her, I help push her chair up the hill. Like, say she's going into a building, I instinctually open the door. Right? Just the little things that you learn to do and you learn to pick up on that you just do without thinking, I would say, it's helped. I'd say a lot. And actually, harkening back to a previous question, it's also really improved the relationship with my mom. Just a lot, I would say, because in a way, it has me help her without her asking, and also without me thinking. So it's a connection that I don't think I would have had otherwise. So yeah.
Thank you. Marjorie, anything you want to say?
Yeah, the first thing that I want to say is that I want to recognize in both Naomi and Braden two character strength that really strikes at me. One, the love for Noah or the love for your mom, Braden, and just the kindness that you're able to show your loved ones, but also yourself in terms of like, um, taking care of yourself, Naomi. That's being kind to you. So I just wanted to recognize that. Now I'm going to switch my hat into a more personal one. And so for me, the challenge was really I'm a single parent, almost does not have a second parent. And so when I came back home after my spinal cord injury, my parents were living in my house. And so for years, we lived sort of together, and they were there to help me out. Because a 2-year-old is a pretty stubborn human being, usually. So we had to learn, my parents and I, to communicate and to be very clear about what we want each, and so for me, it was to say, this is the type of parenting I want in my house. And I understand you're my parents and you may have done this differently, but in my house with my son, this is how we're going to do it. And I was lucky enough to have parents who understood that and respected sort of my say. And that led to certain, situation where I had to say, for example, to my dad, whom I had asked to come down and help me with Thomas, who was throwing a temper tantrum, basically throwing everything in his bedroom because he didn't want to go to bed. And I had to say to my dad, like, oh, you're making it worse. Just get out. Like, leave my house. Like, go in your apartment upstairs. We have 2 apartments close by. I'm going to deal with it. And my dad would say, but you asked me for my help. And I said, yes. And right now you are not helping. So please leave. And I'm going to, figure it out. And that is what sometimes we had to do as adults, to sort of understand that the other person has a choice, has agency, could decide how, I wanted to raise Thomas, and to respect that, and that it was not against them or how they raised me, but it was really about sort of me being mom. And then another, image that I wanted to share with you is one time Thomas really didn't want to go take his bath. And so he hid under the table in the one corner I could not reach, and sort of taunted me, like, haha, you can't reach me. And what was interesting at that moment is that I had a choice. And I decided to be sort of creative and lure him in to the bathroom by, blowing bubbles, which was something that he loved, seeing and playing with. And I realized at that moment that my disability actually had made me a better parent, because if I was an able-bodied parent, I would have gone down under, the table, and I would probably have grabbed Thomas by the arm and, dragged him to the bathroom. Versus now I was using sort of joy and happiness and, bubbles and humor and laughter to actually, have my son sort of decide for himself that being under the table was not as fun as being in the bath with mom, throwing or blowing bubbles. And so those are the 2 sort of examples that I would have to share about that.
That was so lovely. Thank you, Marjorie, for that last image. And thank you, Naomi and Braden, for that as well. You all touched upon this. Self-care. I think, for any individual providing help, which, that can look like many different things, however you want to define that. And also just for individuals who have someone in their life who they love, who has a disability. Practicing self-care is obviously going to be important. And I say that, I say that last bit of, even if it's just someone who has a loved one with a disability. I say that because individuals with disabilities, obviously, we've all discussed this, we all know this, encounter various barriers throughout their lives. And so if you have a loved one who is experiencing those barriers, you're going to, have various emotional responses as well. So to turn this back to the speakers, how do you practice self-care? What does that look like? Whether that's as a more formal caregiver slash helper, or just as someone with another loved one in their lives, or as a disabled individual yourself.
I can start.
Oh.
No, sorry, Braden. Do you want to go? So one thing is that I try to use a character strength that comes naturally to me, which is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And so when I need sort of time to just, you know, just relax and think of something else, not the challenges that are beside me, I will go outside and I will, marvel at the flowers that are in my garden, or I'll look at the tomatoes that are growing, or I'll notice sort of like the bees and how like they could be on the flowers and what they're doing. And so really paying attention to that and just marveling at the fact that nature is so beautiful. That's one way for me to just like be with me and myself and just not think about everything else that might be bothering me at that moment. It's the same thing when I cook. So I love to bake like muffins. Um, Not that I eat them, but I offer them, and so it brings joy to my life when I cook and I bake for other people. And those are my ways of providing self care, by looking outside and smelling the roses and cooking for others.
I will say some ways that I've learned, in a sense, to decompress is, well, yeah, how I practice self-care is I used to, in a sense, not be very great at practicing self-care. I would come home, have all the stress of the day, and then never really have a way to shake it off once I'm home, and then continue that process for a while. That's not a healthy thing to continue doing. So eventually got to the point where I realized after school, work, whatever, I've set 10 minutes of my time to whatever. It's just nothing work related or nothing school related, right? Or that way, because I found I can't help my mom as much as I want to if I'm stressed, right? So in a way, it gives me that time to shake off the stress of the day so I can help my mom to the best I can.
I would say self-care for me is moment by moment. It looks different every day. And I would also say is very subjective. What I'm often told by Noah's providers or asked, what are you doing for self-care? You need to take time for yourself and all of these things. Yes, I know this. How do I do that? So for me, self-care has included taking a hot bath and not just taking a shower. It had been a year since I've sat in a tub and just soaked for 20 minutes. That was self-care. Making sure I make my appointments, going to the dentist, going to the GYN. It's not fun, but it's self-care, right? So in those moments, because it's easy to push the things for me off. A lot of times his care trumps mine, or that's how I have felt. So being intentional in taking care of myself. And another big self-care, I'll call it self-care, has been finding people, building community and finding those that I can teach how to take care of Noah so I can go away. He needs a break from me. And so being able to create space where he is with people that I can trust to care for him and take care of him so I can go away. And I've gone internationally. I've left him for a week or 2 weeks, and people look at me a little weird, and that's okay. So being able, part of my self-care is being able to um, not pay attention to other people's judgments of how I take care of me.
Those were all so wonderful and so important. And I think, you know, just this idea too, Naomi, you brought up of showing, teaching other individuals how to care for Noah, which again brings us back to this idea of bringing in other people, interdependence over independence. And I think cracking open our understanding of caregiving, because like Braden said, you're not able to help Noah, you're not able to be the best caregiver and mom if you're not first taking care of yourself, being intentional about that. So I guess on that note, I would love to hear from everyone. What is one thing, and I know it might be very difficult to limit this to one thing, but we're going to try. What is one thing that could improve the quality of life for yourself and your family?
Well, as many on this webinar know, living with disabilities is very costly, and aging with disabilities is even more so, especially due to secondary health issues. For that reason, I would probably say having more financial freedom would help improve quality of life. For many, having affordable healthcare equipment would, I don't think this needs to be said, but even still, it would drastically improve the quality of life of families because it is frankly outrageous how much half of the equipment costs. But I would say, yeah, that is my one thing: cost of medical equipment and or doctor's appointments.
I will definitely second that, Braden. It really shows, how you understand your mom's disability, because that's a very, I mean, very true. And when we have a spinal cord injury, there's a lot of things that cost a lot of things. What I would add, it's something that actually has helped me. When I had the spinal cord injury happen at the beginning, I was very hard, and just like Braden shared at the beginning, he said, his mom sometimes may feel like she's a burden, or she doesn't want to be like a burden, and those feelings I've had as well. And what helped me at the time, and still does, is connecting with other parents with disabilities, sharing and having my feelings and my experiences validated by somebody else's experiences and emotions. And we often say a lot of bad things about social media, and for sure, there's a risk um, to using social media, but there's also a benefit for some people who, like, how many parents with disabilities are in my neighborhood? Not many. I'm probably the only one in a 10 block radius. And social media allowed me to meet other moms who have a spinal cord injury or who uses wheelchairs, who are going through, similar difficulties in their neighborhoods, and accessing care, in accessing equipment, in raising their children, and making sure that there's discipline in their house, and that their children like respect that discipline. And so that to me was really important, that connection with people who have a similar lived experience as mine. And I will share a community if you are right now a parent with a disability, and want to share a really wonderful community. It's called Real Good Motherhood. I'll share it in the chat. Um, it's a group that was created by another mom with, a disability, and we meet monthly, and we share on Instagram. And so I wish everybody to have that power of connection.
I had to think on this one for a minute because it thinking about, is it something that I can control that would improve my quality of life, or someone else? And that was just an internal question. So, Braden, what you said, yes, as far as the financial aspect, more financial freedom, and Marjorie, the connections. Uh, one of I think the thing for me right in this moment that would improve not only Noah's quality of life, but my quality of life is someone to navigate the all the resources and the politics so I can be present and be mom as we deal with decline. Where there is some health decline happening, there are resources that we're needing, and I don't have the energy to be all things to everybody, right? And so what would improve is having and I know the title of care coordinators are there and they exist. I have yet to have connected with the right person to be able to do what it is that would provide the support that we need.
Thank you all. Yes, Naomi, I want to say that, I think perhaps the reason that is that there often is a gap between individuals who might be in those roles and then knowledge that comes from living something, right? And I also want to say to everyone, all of the speakers, I think that what I'm hearing is that having something that is able to give yourself and your loved one, your family, more agency, to bring it back to that word again, is really, is really integral to improving the quality of life for your family. And I want to, from there, then transition to a quick question that we have in the Q&A. And then we will discuss a few questions that we got from registrants. And I just remembered one other thing I was going to say. Marjorie, you spoke about the importance of connecting with other parents, other mothers who use a wheelchair. And Braden is a member, or member is not the right word. He's a family peer mentor with the Reeve Foundation. And I just want to really push that really phenomenal program, both at Reeve, please, utilize it. And also then just the importance of connecting with others who share similar experiences as well. Okay, so this is a question we have in the Q&A box. And any of you are welcome to answer it. I keep hearing the word agency. What does that mean?
Answer that. So agency is really composed of like three elements. The first is I know I can do something. I know I can exert control and I have the ability to do that thing. That could be through someone else, like we mentioned. So it doesn't have to be like I am the one who is, giving Thomas's the bath. It could be I'm giving Thomas's the bath through my mother who will do the action, but I'm sort of saying, please wash his hair, please, scrub a little bit more. And so I am capable of exerting control in the here and now. The second one is optimism. So I'm able to say, I'm able to exert control now, to decide right now. But I am also able to, in the future, continue to exert that control or that ability to do what I want to do. And so that's optimism. And then the third one, it's imagination. Is that if I need to, I could think of different solutions. Like, for example, I didn't know if I could give Thomas's a bath, but I could think of like many different ways I could. And so imagination and creativity will give me those ideas of how I could exert control and choice over my life. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes, so we received many wonderful questions and comments from registrants. And there's two that we want to hone in on in this last few minutes of the webinar. We'll start with one because I don't want to say both of them, but how can parents advocate effectively while still honoring their child's rights to make decisions that may differ from what the parent believes is best? Naomi, you spoke a bit about this before. And again, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but is so tied to agency.
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. And in thinking of it and talking about it, and just as I mentioned with Noah and Marjorie, as you mentioned, being able to make decisions for yourself, I look at it as if I treat Noah as if he were a typical developing child. So Noah has developmental disabilities along with physical disabilities. But I look at him, that's just one part of him. And so he is a person and he's going to make decisions that I'm not necessarily going to agree with, just like I did with my parents. And so in treating him the same way, you're not always going to agree, and that's okay. So you can still advocate for them. You lead them the best that you can. You teach them and know that they still have a mind of their own. And they have the right to make decisions. And some of our best teachers are through failure. I'm still failing forward. And so it's as a parent, you have to learn to let go. And that's uncomfortable because you no longer have that control. But it's a learning process for you and for your child.
Thank you, Naomi. And also then related, what helps parents transition from caregiver to supporter without losing closeness?
Oh, yes. So that to me kind of goes back to that our role is parent. You know, that's how our children came into this world. They came in as children and us as their parent, not to be a full-time caregiver. And so the ultimate goal is for our children to, let me rephrase. My ultimate goal is for Noah to be a productive member of society, however that looks like. And so the same, if he were typical developing, it would be to help him become the best that he can be, to turn into that supporter and his biggest cheerleader, and to have others as he needs help to come in to support or to do that day to day. You're not going to live forever as much as you may want to and feel the need that you have to because you're the only one that can protect and do all the things for them. These are the thoughts that go through parents' minds, right? And that's a disservice, not only for your child, but for you too. So you can still be close. You don't have to be the caregiver to have that closeness. So it's being able to create ways in space and allow others to come in and to be a support so you can be mom or dad or brother or sister.
Thank you. We had a question come in the Q&A that I would like Marjorie to answer quickly. Where can this individual find the description of agency that you said?
Yes. I could send the link to a research article. This definition is by Martin Seligman, who is the founder of positive psychology. So I will send the link. I'll just find it in a few minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, and any of our speakers, if you have things that you want to be shared, you can certainly send them to me and we will do our best to disseminate them. Okay, we're going to do a quick lightning round because we're on 2 minutes, but I do really want to end on this note. Looking to the future for your family and yourself, what gives you hope? Or where do you see hope? Where do you find hope?
This is a really hard one for me. Hope and I have a complex relationship. So I will say what for the future, I want to be able to say that Naomi and Noah have lived a good life and it was modeled in how people should be treated. And if they happen to have a disability, that doesn't matter how you, I'm getting tongue-tied. Because a person has a disability doesn't mean that they should be treated differently. They are different, but not less than. And so my hope is that the way that we are living our life and modeling that for other people, that it continues to spread.
Well, when I look to the future, a few things that give me hope. I can nail it down to really two things. Number one, I found a lot of hope mentoring other kids who've been where I've been, right? In a sense, so that no other kid has to grow up with that lonely feeling of not being able to relate to anyone else your age, right? Or not able to relate to other kids, right? So that's one of the things that gives me hope. The second thing is that I'm studying engineering so that I can hopefully later down the line give my mom the life that frankly she deserved. So those are the two things.
Wow. And Braden, you almost, well, I think you did it. Brought tears. My son also, I think, is going to be an engineer. And when I hear you say um, the things that you say when you talk about your mom, it really sort of gives me hope, I guess, which is, part of the question. But for me, it's your generation that gives me hope. It's my son. It's, what he's able to do. It's how children of parents with disabilities, learn about resilience and learn about coping and learn about perseverance and grit and learn about community and about teamwork and about love and about kindness. That is what gives me hope. And meetings like this one where we could share about our lived experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, it truly is an honor to be able to moderate this discussion. And I'm not just saying that, it really truly is. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to our ASL interpreters, our closed captioners, Kelly behind the scenes doing the webinar stuff. And we are going to close out. And I guess thank you to our attendees as well. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.